today we'll be talking about the 3 different ways to get published. We're going to talk about traditional publishing, hybrid publishing, and self-publishing. And it can be very confusing. Like, the publishing industry can be very confusing. There's a lot of different avenues, and especially in the last 10 years or so, the number of avenues that you can use to get published have only increased. And that's thanks to technology, honestly, thanks to technology and the internet and all these apps and tools that are available to the average aspiring writer. So let's break it down. Let's start with traditional publishing, because that's kind of been the basis of everything. So traditional publishing works this way. You start off, you have the aspiring writer, the aspiring author, and they write a query letter, a pitch letter, to a literary agent. A literary agent is the go-between, like the mediator, the representative, the person who represents the author as they seek out a contract with a publishing house. So in this query letter, the structure goes as follows. The opening paragraph, which talks about, it's introduction. It's like, this is the title of my book, here's how many words it is, here's the genre, and like a little blurb about what it is, like a tagline of what it is. And alternatively, I have seen this first paragraph be moved to the bottom with all that information, but it's preferred for it to be up at the top. The second paragraph, the second and third paragraphs are basically a pitch. It's a summary, almost like a blurb of what happens in the book. What's the plot? Who are the main characters? Why should the reader care to read this book? Why should the literary agent care to read this book and sign it on to be the author's representative? So this is really where the meat and potatoes is. This is where it matters most. You really need to have a deep understanding of the first 50 to 75 pages of your book and what the biggest details are, what the most interesting and eye-catching plot points are in that first 50 to 75 pages of your book. And then the last paragraph is introducing yourself, introducing your credibility. If you are writing nonfiction, this is where you list your credentials, your degrees, your research, your whatever, your life experiences. If you are a fiction writer, it might be good to explain a little bit about your profile, like whether or not you're involved in a writers group, whether or not you're involved in a writers guild, or what your day job is that might be relevant to what you're writing, stuff like that. And then, of course, you have your close. So that is the structure of a query letter. And this is sent to the literary agent, and it gets put in the slush pile. The slush pile is basically all of the hundreds and thousands of emails that literary agencies receive from writers wanting them to represent their books. And it's really important for writers to do their research and understand who the best literary agents are for their work. There's a handful of different resources out there that you can use to help with your search. Some of them are like Publishers Weekly. Sometimes they'll post news releases of new agents and what they're looking for. Twitter's a really good option too. Twitter is used by a lot of literary agencies to announce when they're open to queries, and also just looking at individual literary agency websites. You can find a lot of literary agency websites. I'll put some links in the description to help you with that search. After a literary agent has read your work, read your query letter, they'll ask for your work. They'll ask for the manuscript, and then you'll send it off to them. And it'll take a couple of weeks. Usually it's 4 to 6 weeks for them to read it, because they're not just reading yours, they're reading multiple at a time. And then you'll receive either a rejection, or they might have somewhere on their website where they'll say, like, we only respond back if we want you, because of the volume that they receive. And some of the more reputable, like higher profile literary agencies do have this policy where they won't contact you back if they don't want your work. So once the literary agent has determined that they love your book, then they will reach out and you'll hash out a contract with each other. And the contract might have a timeline on it. The contract basically says that I'm your literary agent. I will help you with representing your work and sending it out to publishing agencies. And then from there, that's when the real work kind of begins, because the literary agent will either help you, like, there's several things that the literary agent and literary agency does for the author. They can help polish up the manuscript to be ready for sending out to publishing houses. They can then also help with a proposal where you put together, this is especially true for nonfiction works, where you need a proposal. You need to understand your target audience. You need to understand the genre that it's in, comparative titles, and basically list out what market and competitive marketing advantages you have. Like, do you have a big following on social media? Do you have a lot of credibility in a certain circle of influence in academics and research and professional profile? Anything that could help prove to the publishing house that you are a good economic investment for them, because at the end of the day, they are businesses and they need a return on their investment, because when you work with a publishing house, no one gets paid until the expenses are covered. So once the literary agent helps you with the proposal and the pitch, then it gets sent out to editors. The literary agency has lots of very strong relationships, really strong relationships with publishing houses and with editors in those publishing houses. So they'll have the best knowledge on which publishing houses may be most interested in your work. And also, as I mentioned in a previous video, literary agencies also may have contacts in Hollywood. So they may also help you with that, but that's another video. So once the literary agent has sent out the pitch to several editors that they believe are a good fit for your work, then from there, the editor will determine and read the pitch, and then if they like it, they'll request a manuscript. And then they'll be given several weeks to determine whether or not they want to go forward. So the editor here, once they've determined they've read your manuscript and they love it, then they're the ones fighting for you internally within the publishing house. The decision has to be run up the flagpole, essentially. And they'll be the ones fighting for it. They'll be the ones trying to prove that it is a viable investment for the publishing house. And then once the buy-in from senior people has been achieved, then you'll be offered a contract. But the contract, when I say offered a contract, and when I say once you sign, the process of negotiating those contracts can take weeks, maybe even a couple months, just depending on what rights the publishing house wants access to, and how long it takes to correspond, because they are working with multiple people, multiple contracts, multiple editors and literary agencies all at once. So in the contract, the goal of the literary agent, of your literary agent is to help you retain as many rights as you can from the publishing house. And when I say rights, I mean intellectual property rights and subsidiary rights. So like you want to retain foreign language translation rights, because if that publishing house doesn't have very strong relationships with foreign publishing houses, then you don't want to give them the right to publish it in another language. You would rather seek out a stronger relationship that the literary agent might be able to help foster and go through that avenue than give it to a publishing house that doesn't handle those things. And another right that you want to retain is film and TV rights. I forget the other term that's called by, but essentially film and TV rights. You want to retain that. You don't want to give it to the publishing house, because again, if they don't have strong relationships with people in Hollywood, then you don't want that. Plus, you wouldn't reap the benefits from it, because you've given away any economic advantages or economic return on it would be reaped by the publishing house and not by you. So you want to retain as many rights as you can, and that's the goal of a literary agent. That is like the biggest perk of having a literary agent, is that you have someone who understands intellectual property rights and someone who understands how to help you not get screwed over in terms of a contract. So once that is established, and once you've submitted a query letter to a literary agent, and the literary agent has come back and said that they liked it, there's just a process. So once you have gone through the query phase and secured a literary agent, and once you've gone through the proposal phase and you've secured a publishing house, now you work on, you're given an editor. The publishing house will give you an editor. You'll work with them. You'll work with the marketing department, maybe. Sometimes that you won't have access to that. That is probably creative control here is one of the biggest negatives of the traditional route to publishing, is that you may or may not have any say whatsoever in the cover of the book, or in how it's marketed, or in how it's distributed. So you'll be working, it's a month-long process again. You'll go through different types of edits: developmental, copy editing, line editing, proofreading, all the things. There's several different types of copy editing, and I might do a video later on the different types of editing. So after months, this whole process can take years, and I like, not just a few years. It can take several years. It can take a decade or more for this whole process to play out, depending on your writing journey, depending on how marketable your genre is. There are certain genres that sell better than others, and how commercialized your I don't know why I put quotation around that. How commercialized your genre is. Like young adult books, young adult fiction, super commercialized. There is clear distinctions in that niche, and there are certain books that just sell really well. And the trends. There are certain trends that ebb and flow within all genres, and depending on when your book lands in the slush pile during the curve of that trend will also determine whether or not you get published anytime soon. So there's just a lot of things going on all at once. So that generally is the way to get published traditionally. You work with the publishing house, they handle distribution. In terms of economic payout, typically the percentage of payout is that you receive just a small percent of either the profit or of the sale of the book. So you might receive, for easy numbers, let's say you have a book that costs $10 and you are set to receive 10% of the sale. So that $10 sale that you receive 10% from, you get $1. Now say you receive 10% of the profit. So let's say that $10 book has $5 in publishing, distributing, marketing costs. Then you receive 10% of $5, which is 50 cents. See the difference? So depending on how the contract is worded will determine how much you receive. So very tricky. Again, the literary agent is the one who should be navigating you through this process to make sure you get the most as you can economically from this whole process. So that is the traditional publishing route in a nutshell. Now let's talk about self-publishing, because self-publishing is a whole different ballgame. When you decide to self-publish a book, you basically become a one-person publishing house. You create an LLC, you buy the ISBN, which is the international book number. It's the barcode. It's the string of numbers in the barcode. You buy that for each book that you print. You are the one that's creating the relationships with the distribution, with the printers. You are doing the marketing all on your own, and it's not for the faint of heart. Self-publishing is definitely not for the faint of heart, because very few authors who self-publish make any kind of money at all, and that's for a number of reasons. It could be the fact that marketing is an afterthought. It could be that they didn't time their release right. It could be any number of things for why you don't make very much money as a self-publishing author. There are, of course, those big name anomalies that we hear of, like the author of 50 Shades of Grey. I don't know her name, but she was self-published, and any number of others. There's lots of others. I just can't think of them off the top of my head right now. But yeah, self-publishing is definitely different. With self-publishing, everything that I just said about traditional publishing, all those middlemen are cut out. You are the publishing house. You are the marketer. You are the one who hires the graphic designer for the cover. You're the one who hires someone to do the typesetting for the book. You're the one who has to make sure that it all, like the format of the book, is within the parameters for the printers. And there's several different platforms that you can use to help distribute the book. Ingram Spark is a very popular one. Amazon KDP is another one. And BookBaby, there's all sorts of others. I'll put a bunch of links in the description for all of them, because they're, and really depending, like I'll probably do an in-depth difference later on, because the differences are more than what you'd think. In terms of marketing, you're the marketer. You have to know social media strategy. You have to know digital marketing. You have to know how to do all of these things. Like you really have to understand the business side of publishing in order to be a successful self-published author. And from there, we're going to move into talking about hybrid publishing. Hybrid kind of takes the best of both of these. It's kind of like a middle ground. And hybrid publishing used to be, just a few years ago, it used to be considered slimy, because it was new and people didn't understand, and there are a lot of scams out there who are just want to take people's money, and they don't provide a very good service and all that kind of stuff. But there are standards for hybrid publishing. Hybrid publishing basically is an author paying for the services under one roof to help them put together the final product of their book and move it forward into publication. So the hybrid publisher is almost like an agency that does all the heavy lifting for you. You are still, at the end of the day, you have more creative control. You have more creative control than you would with a traditional publisher, but you don't have to do all of the typesetting, the cover, the figure out who the graphic designer will be, who will do the marketing, all that kind of stuff. You don't have to figure that out like you do in self-publishing, because you have a team who will do it for you, that you pay for. And that is where that's where some people say that it gets a little hairy, because, what's the difference between a hybrid publisher and a vanity publisher? And essentially a vanity publisher, the difference is quality versus quantity. A vanity publisher will take literally anyone's money and put forth very low quality. Whereas a hybrid publisher will be much more selective about who they take on as clients, and they put forth a lot more work into the final product than a vanity publisher would. So those are the three, in a nutshell, those are the three different types of publishing routes that you can go into. And none of them are wrong. It really just depends on what kind of relationship you want to have with the different people on your team. Do you want someone who, like for literary agencies and the traditional publishing route, do you really need someone who to walk you through every single step of the way? Do you want to be a little bit more hands-off? Because that's a traditional route. You are a little bit more hands-off. You don't do the marketing side of things as much. You still need to do it. You still need to know how to do all that stuff. But you'll have a team within the publishing house who will help you with that. For the hybrid, you have to navigate a lot of those contracts and what kinds of rights. Like you retain a lot of those subsidiary rights, and you navigate that. But you also have a team of people who can help you with the strategy of getting published, who can help you with the design, with getting the ISBN, with getting set up, with all that stuff. And then with self-publishing, it's all you. You're the one navigating the relationships with freelancers and with setting up an LLC and all that stuff. So it really just depends on what kind of person you are, how comfortable you are with navigating all the hoops that have to be jumped through, because regardless, all the hoops have to be jumped through. You have to get the ISBN, you have to do the marketing, you have to do you have to handle distribution. It just depends on how hands-on you want to be. So that's all for today. I hope this was helpful. And as always, I'll put a bunch of links down in the description that goes into more depth of what I just said. And sign up for my email updates, sign up, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.